Hey everyone, Meet Kevin here. Welcome back to another episode of the Meet Kevin Show. Today we have somebody very special. We have Ivory Hecker, which what's really exciting about this is many of you remember my campaign for governor in California and how difficult it was to get media attention. Now, while I've been on Fox, I've been on many of the national right-sided channels, it was really difficult to get the left-leaning channels to talk to me, and it's always made me wonder, how much media censorship is there really coming from producers? And when I saw this here back in the summer, I thought, oh my gosh, this is exactly how I feel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this clip of Ivory, and then we're going to talk to Ivory. So I'm super excited. Here we go. I'm going to go ahead and play this for about 30 seconds. Take a look at this. This is when Ivory gives us a little bit of a heads up that maybe there is some real censorship happening in the news. Let's listen in.
Thanks, guys. That's right. Before we get to that story, I want to let you, the viewers, know that Fox Corp has been muzzling me to keep certain information from you, the viewers. And from what I'm gathering, I am not the only reporter being subjected to this. I am going to be releasing some recordings about what goes on behind the scenes at Fox because it applies to you, the viewers. I found a nonprofit journalism group called Project Veritas. It's going to help put that out tomorrow, so tune into them. But as for this heat wave across Texas, you can see what it's doing.
This is incredible. And so I am super, super duper intrigued. I've been following Ivory's story, and today we get to talk to her. So welcome aboard, Ivory. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I gotta know, what did it feel like doing that piece right there? Because you had to be on pins and needles because you know the hammer was coming down.
Yeah, I knew it was a hard page turn in my life. Like I was going into a new chapter and ending a chapter that I had loved, that I'd worked so hard for. So it was just a crazy experience, like hard to explain. I went into shock immediately after going live, and I could barely drive home. And then I bawled my eyes out at home.
Oh my gosh.
I was so sad that it had come to that, you know.
So tell me about this. What made you feel compelled? I mean, I know you've got and correct me where I'm wrong. I believe when you're a reporter, you've got sort of desk managers, and then they're managers for them, and they kind of dictate, okay, we're going to cover this story, we're not going to cover this story. Tell me a little bit about it. There's some examples that really threw you over the edge where you're like, this is ridiculous. The people deserve to know this, but media is censoring us. What happened there? Because you were in media. I mean, almost the definition of media over at a local Fox station.
Yeah, it was Fox owned. So the Murdochs were the big bosses there. And I began to learn that a lot of edicts during the pandemic were coming down from the tip top in New York, not local Houston, you know. And, the biggest thing was when I was harshly punished for just allowing a doctor to say what he uses to treat his patients. I was supposed to know to censor him out, to censor part of what he said out, to accept the things that were with the narrative, and then cut out the sound bites that weren't with the narrative. And because I didn't follow that, they harshly punished me. And actually, corporate took weeks to draft a fake letter about me and put it in my file. Had to get a lawyer. Then they worked with they at one point they accidentally forwarded me an email from their Fox Corp LA lawyers about how to talk to me. Oh. It was like, this is insane. I was like, what is going on? All because you want to keep certain medical information from viewers. That's creepy.
My understanding is if you do a story, let's say you interview someone, then you have this footage and you can edit that together, right?
Yeah, but I have to write a script about what I covered, and the script is what I will say on air. And then I have to forward that script to my bosses, and they rewrite certain things a lot of times and then send it back to me, and I'm supposed to just say what the script says.
Whoa. So they'll rewrite your script. Even though you did the reporting, they'll rewrite it. And this rewriting, I mean, how often does it change the narrative? I understand like an editing review, but at what point does it rise to that level of changing the whole narrative?
Not very often. But, there were more cases than not, and during the pandemic where they were trying to change the narrative. And it's just the way that I cover news. I provide the facts and the evidence in such a compelling way that if my bosses say we can't cover this or we need to change this, then it's going to be met with a big why, because this is obviously a journalistic script. And so the bosses, sometimes they'll backpedal and be like, okay. I mean, there was one time I covered a black on black murder, and the black friend of the black victim showed up to the scene. The guy had been killed by a black man. White officers were fixing the situation. They had just arrested the killer. And the black friend said, basically Black Lives Matter needs to take a hard look at this, because what the biggest issue for black people is black people. This is what the black friend said. I included that in the script. My boss had an issue with that. That's against the narrative.
Oh my gosh.
You're not, black people are not supposed to be calling all Black Lives Matter. So she stopped me right there, and I said, excuse me, what's wrong with that? Yeah. And she and I, this was in the pandemic. I had already come at her with a lawyer over the COVID treatment stuff. She knew I was down to fight. And so she was like, oh, okay, well, fine. But if you're short on time, just that's the soundbite to get rid of. I was like, okay, got it. And I rolled that clip.
Nice. Yeah, because that's interesting, because oftentimes in the media we hear a BLM, it's always white versus black. And so here was this example where you were hearing a black person amplify that, hey, there are also black versus black issues here. And so your boss wanted to censor you from covering that.
Exactly. It went totally counter to the Black Lives Matter narrative. A black man calling out the Black Lives Matter and saying black people are actually killing black people. And here at this scene, the white people are saving the day. They're actually helping my friend's family. They're not screwing this up. Anyway, he was there to call out Black Lives Matter. My boss didn't like it. I'm like, this is the best friend of the victim. I'm going to let him say what he wants to say, just like we've allowed every other best friend of a victim to say what they want to say.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Jeez. Okay. So this, and then with the, going back to that first thing that started creating this tension during the pandemic with the doctor, how similar is that to what we saw with Joe Rogan, CNN, and the whole ivermectin thing?
Oh, it's exactly the sort of thing that we're talking about here. What we saw with Joe Rogan, he takes doctor prescribed. I don't know what words we can say here. It's on YouTube. Right?
Anything you want.
Doctor prescribed I word, and and then all of the media goes on to say that he hijacked some horse paste, which is absolutely absurd and misleading, and actually would probably encourage people to go to the feed store instead of to their doctor. So the fake media was spinning a lie about Joe Rogan that was going to cause people to go to the feed store, when Joe could have helped educate people that you can go to your doctor and get this prescription for something that has a lot of science backing it at this point. It's been studied over the course of the pandemic and been proven to be very effective. And it is just startling, the censorship of this COVID treatment. It's really creeps me out. Why wouldn't you want to cover lives, what's working to save lives? And that's exactly the sort of stuff that I was censored on. I was first censored on the H word. I hadn't even paid attention to HCQ. And this doctor just said he uses it. I was like, okay, I'm putting that out there. Oh, this is a taboo word now? We can't, I didn't know. I wasn't following the medical narrative. You keep sending me to crime scenes. So suddenly, I was a crime reporter prior to this. I didn't care about medical stuff. And now I'm on all this medical stuff, and I'm supposed to follow the medical narrative. And it was absurdity. And so I brought up the I word too. I was like, did you know that the nation of India right now is completely going against the World Health Org and disseminating this drug to all of the nation.
Wow.
And my boss is like, we are not going to talk about India.
Oh, wow. Oh, interesting. Gosh, I mean, it's so odd to me because it does feel like, at least you could cover it to the point where, hey, look, some folks are taking ivermectin, some folks are taking the hydroxychloroquine, but it's important to talk to your doctor because maybe some medical
Yeah.
experts say this is controversial. Some say don't take it. Others say, hey, maybe for certain cases there's a benefit. I'm surprised they wouldn't try to take that kind of more neutral approach as opposed to this approach that you're describing, which is just, yeah, we're not going to mention those words at all.
Yeah, it became a media blackout. Blackout. In fact, I-word was only covered once by my TV station in April of 2020 when it was initial research out of Australia showing that in vitro tests showed immense promise for stopping COVID in its tracks. And then they went into a media blackout as the science actually progressed into humans and nations started prescribing it to their people, and there was dramatic improvement in cases, yet the media across the board went into a blackout on it.
Wow, that's
Pretty
incredible. It's so odd to me. And do you think this is coming from, like, where do you think these narratives are coming from? Something like, it sounded like initially you said maybe the top, so Fox Corp all the way at the top. But why? Is it a political push? Are there connections with them and maybe the companies that make, who knows, resveratrol, Gilead, Moderna, Pfizer? Why? Where's this coming from?
It's hard to tell because the bosses will never admit it. They'll never admit to why they, my bosses may not even know why they're taking orders from their bosses. They just want to keep their big executive jobs. And my boss wanted to keep her very nice house. Okay. So she's just going to follow Lachlan's edicts and Shari Berg's edicts out of New York City. And she does weekly calls with Shari Berg in New York at Fox Corp. And they all make sure they're on the same page. Shari yells at her sometimes. It's all good. And she, to handle Ivory, So it's all good. I'm not the only one. They watch all of us on-air personalities closely. So it's a wonderful thing to be free right now.
No kidding. Yeah. I was just looking for reference for the viewer here. I just quickly found, and I haven't read through this yet, but you had referenced it, and I found a publication here in Science Direct, and it talks about this FDA-approved drug, ivermectin, and this is from back in June of 2020, and it talks about inhibiting the replication of COVID in vitro, like you had mentioned. So very interesting.
Ooh, you're asking for your YouTube to get deleted here.
Well, yeah, I hope not.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, I tried to put stuff like that out on YouTube. I learned the hard way. YouTube is really strict about this stuff.
Yikes.
Yeah, I mean, you put up a straight up peer-reviewed scientific study on YouTube, strike. It's really bad.
Well, now you're making me nervous. Wait, disclaimer. We are not recommending you take or do not take. Talk to your doctors. We are not medical experts. We love YouTube.
Exactly. Whatever YouTube wants.
So what happened to you after? I think that's interesting to me, and I think the viewers as well, because you went home after you did this piece. Obviously, you were either distraught, full of energy and nerves. What happened? Like, how long until your phone rang and you're like, oh no, here it is?
Let's see. I went live at 5, and then it was like 7 o'clock when my boss called and just said, "Why did you do that?" So it took 2 hours, and then she called and asked a simple question. And I said, you know why I did this. We've talked about this many times, In fact, I spelt it out in our annual review a month or two ago. And even when I had to re-sign the employee handbook in 2021, I spelt out some of the issues. Like, every chance I got, I would talk to my bosses about this stuff. And so she sits there and is like, why did you do this? And probably for corporate, she had asked that. And she was probably recording. I hope she was. And I went on to pour out my heart to her, and I just reiterated everything that we had talked about in regards to journalism, transparency, censorship versus free speech. I talked about it all. I spelled out, I named specific stories that where alarming things had happened as far as their muzzling of certain facts. And so she was quiet on the phone for most of the time. And I just went through it all with her again, as like a closure call. I knew that'd probably be pretty much our last in-depth conversation. So
it sounds like she felt that as well, that she was almost calling you as like, I'm gonna lose you now. But it's almost like she knew. It didn't sound like she was calling to scold you there, huh?
No, there was no scolding, just asking why, and then saying, well, thank you for sharing your side of it, or whatever she said.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then she called back at like 11 p.m. or something and said, you're suspended. And then a week later, I received something in the mail that I was fired.
Yikes.
Which is what I wanted. I was trapped in a contract. It was the only way to get out of the contract.
Oh, interesting. So in media, you're signing these, your contracts like 2 or 3 years?
2 years, yeah.
2 years contract. Okay. Wow, that's incredible. So I want to know what happened next as well. I'm going to quickly mention, because I saw a couple of folks mention. So just for the sake of it, let's see here. There were a couple extra things that are just worth throwing up. Let me make this a little. There is, and I haven't read these, but I'm interested. So it is interesting that even after these studies, you've got the World Health Organization saying only use that I word in clinical trials, and that's from March of 2021. And then the FDA looks like has a blog about why you should not use it. So it's interesting. Yeah. It's actually gone pretty pervasive to where a lot of folks are talking about it. But we'll get off the discussion of that, and I want to go to what's next for you, and where have you gone from here? Obviously, you've been on a whole lot of news stations since this happened. I don't know if you've ever been on a Fox News station again, but I know you've been covered by a whole lot of news stations and had a whole lot of interviews. What have been some of the big questions people have asked? What are some of the things that have come out of what you've done? Any big change? How was Project Veritas? Tell me.
Oh yeah, it was crazy how I was blown up with alternative media. Only the alternative media wanted to interview me. No calls from NBC, CBS, ABC, obviously no Fox calls, no CNN calls. The mainstream media didn't want to talk to me about it, but the alternative media hit me up a lot. It was funny. A lot of people who like collaborate with Fox in some way, maybe they have like a Fox radio show or something, they would hit me up and then they would cancel. They would realize that they can't talk to me because I'm calling out their people. They didn't connect those dots. It happens so many times.
So you'd be ready to go on air where you're sitting and they're doing the mic check and everything, and they'd cancel you.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, they would give me more heads up than that, but they would reach out initially. A lot of times it would just be like initial reach out, like, let's do this. And then they would never follow through with confirming the interview. And it was only the Fox associated people that this would happen to. And some pretty big names too, that I'm not going to call out, but it's pretty sad. And it was really funny when James O'Keefe first, prepared me for this. It was like, he's like, okay, you're going to get a lot of attention. He's like, you're going to be on Tucker Carlson. Is that okay? Like, Tucker's going to want you on. And I was like, James, I'm not going to be on Tucker. I'm calling out Fox. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wait, so so I want to know, so James, did he kind of help you? Did you talk to him before this happened or after? And how did he guide you through all this?
Yeah, James, actually Project Veritas connected with me on Twitter first. They found me on Twitter. I was already following them. They gave me a follow back and asked me if I'd witnessed anything in my newsroom. And I was like, yes, I sure have. Wow. So then, we set up a meeting. I got dinner with James and the crew, and then we talked it over, and yeah, we just decided to proceed. How did James prepare me? He sent me some books, actually. He sent me a book about whistleblower stories, which was actually pretty bleak. This book like talked about people's lives being ripped apart after blowing the whistle. I was like, are you trying to convince me not to do this?
Ouch.
Yeah, so the whole team was very supportive leading up to that, and you know, I'll forever be indebted to them for how they helped free me from Fox and put an army of freedom lovers behind me.
Do you think you could have done this alone, or was it really that having that sort of somebody helping you along the way that kind of gave you that maybe extra courage?
Oh, his whole staff is so amazing, and he assigned one undercover journalist to me. Actually, the same journalist who got that crazy behind the scenes footage at CNN. You know, the CNN guy, Charlie Chester, talking about propaganda. The same.
Yes.
Actually, this girl was working on my case while she was working on his case. Wow. And she's like, I gotta go get dinner with Charlie tomorrow. Oh. Anyway, but she was so supportive. The Project Veritas team was really wonderful, and so they helped give me more courage for sure. I would not have called out my station live on air if not for them.
Do you think things have gotten worse since COVID, or was it more since like the 2016 election where we've seen this more divisiveness, especially with media? I mean, you've even got Andrew Yang, who just came out and suggested that we're almost at civil war levels of distrust between parties, and that there are a lot of folks in the middle, but gosh, if you're left versus right, it's ugly.
Yeah, really. Ever since Trump came around, it really led to some serious division. And then the pandemic, I think, just took it to another level for sure. Crazy.
Now, have you ever considered before kind of what happened with Fox Houston, did you ever consider trying to see if you can go to a different station, just like live out that contract, just put your head down and go to a different station afterwards?
Yeah, well, once I realized, the lengths that Fox would go to for their narrative or for whatever cause, I wanted out and I didn't know what to do. I had loved journalism, and then another big station reached out to me, and I was like, oh yeah, maybe, can we do freelance or something? And then they're like, yeah, well, let's keep in contact because you have a lot of time on your Fox contract. And I was like, yeah, I do. So as time progressed, I was less and less interested. I was like, you know what? It's not going to be any different at that other place. It's actually probably going to be worse. Some of these corporations are even worse than Fox Corp. So I was just like, you know what? I don't think I want that. This is the era of independent journalism, honestly. So but every day I would rack my head about what to do when I left Fox. And finally, early this year, I bought a personal training certification course. And just doing that was like, gave me peace. I was like, okay, I have a plan. I'll just at least do that. Because I don't know what to do. I just know I want out of this.
So you were just looking for any way to get out of essentially journalism because you had become so frustrated with the control of your narrative. Because my understanding is, as a reporter, you're finding this news and then you're putting the pieces together, but then it must be frustrating to have it always get edited, and it sounds like it's gotten worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, I didn't want to get out of journalism. I just wanted to get out of corporate news,
News,
where there's a lot of propaganda and stuff. And I knew that just was not for me. I just didn't want to be controlled like that, and have, be listening to my viewers' questions every day and knowing my bosses never want me to go seek answers to those questions.
Wow.
So I was like, if anything, I'm literally wasting time every day for this corporation, and the viewers' questions are left hanging every single day. And that's why ratings continue to go down. Well, our questions are not getting answered. They're pushing another propaganda piece on the latest prize you can win if you get it in the arm. So, I was just like, I can't be used as a tool of propaganda and distraction. And once it dawned on me, it's not going to be any better at any other news corporation. The corporate news is all the same. That's when I was really racking my brain about what else to do.
Wow, that's incredible. So, what's your response when you hear the term fake news? Like, how is this? Is this every corporate kind of news, or what does that mean to you?
I feel like there's an element of fake news in all of the big corporations right now, all the big news corporations. And it's interesting what we're seeing. The same deceptive narratives that are in fake news are also in the social media corporations. Like the same facts are censored, like here on YouTube.
I hope not.
They punish. Yeah, you might want to go back and edit out the I word because they're harsh about that. Like, we won't talk about this unless we're calling it horse paste and saying it's terrible and you shouldn't take it and you might die because it only goes into animals. That is the definition of fake news right there, because it has been used on humans since 1987. I think it's been FDA approved for humans since 1987, used on humans since even before that, and yes, initially for parasites, but now for years it's been used successfully against viruses as well. There's been a lot of studies on this against viruses, and it's really intriguing. Just the relationship between big media and big pharma is fascinating, and why the media never looks into why some of these treatments that seem to be so multi-purpose, and it really, the studies are amazing, and then they never really progress out of those studies. What's going on?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, gosh, it must just be so fascinating to even just, well, I mean, it is just to think about how much goes on way at the top, like you're mentioning, even up at that Fox corporate level. So,
Yeah.
what's next for you? Are you? I know you've got your Twitter still. You also have a YouTube channel. So tell me about that. Tell everyone about that.
Yes, everybody go to my YouTube, youtube.com/Ivory Hecker. Keep it real with Ivory Hecker. I'm doing a lot more YouTube segments now on the news, both my original journalism and kind of picking apart the corporate news narrative. So go check out youtube.com/Ivory Hecker. But I also have my website for all the stories that YouTube censors out, which unfortunately are a lot. A lot of my audience's biggest questions are things that can't be answered on YouTube. So I put those stories on my uncensored website, ivoryhecker.com.
So have you found that a lot that YouTube is also kind of pushing back on you? Have you had to delete things off your channel, or tell me about that?
Yes, I've already had 2 strikes. I was on the hairy edge of my entire channel getting deleted.
Whoa.
Out of nowhere. So I'm learning there's a lot of things. They don't want you to talk about basically any talk about getting it in the arm can get your, I'm using these weird code words like that because it gets your channel flagged, especially in the way that we delve into what's really going on with that. And then COVID treatments. COVID treatments, other than the super standard of care, talking about hyping up ventilators. If you talk about some of these things that are actually low cost and very effective, you can get your channel zapped really easily. Wow. And I learned that the hard way. It was actually 2 videos were zapped for COVID treatment talk. And then 1 video actually because I showed a clip of Alex Jones interviewing me.
So gotcha.
Lots of rules on YouTube. They don't like Alex Jones. Don't show his face on there.
Geez. I mean, how does that make you feel? I mean, I worry that have you ever thought it kind of feels like you're going from like kind of one potential form of censorship to another?
Yeah. But at least I'm free to talk in code words and have my own uncensored website. So, we've invented a new language here on YouTube, code words, and I'm able to still talk to my audience here. But then also, that website, it's all mine, just no corporate overlords. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to do independent journalism, and how like life has presented these resources that allow me to do that. Wow. In a way I'd never expected. I thought I was going to have to switch to personal training, which I do love fitness.
Oh, that's well, because you have an Instagram as well. So
yes.
we talked on this. Awesome. Okay, that's amazing. So, yeah, I mean, what do you? I guess maybe as a last question, when it comes to that jab in the arm, are you choice? Are you anti or for? Can you say that?
Yeah, I'm for informed consent.
Okay.
It was just it was really alarming to me when my bosses had meetings about how to coerce people, like, oh, let's do some news about how you'll lose your job if you don't get it in the arm, and all these audience questions about what's really going on with that shot will leave unanswered.
Oh, but I mean, it is true.
And then the
can lose your job, right?
What's that?
No, I was just saying, I mean, there are a lot of people losing their jobs.
I know, right? So it's interesting, back, and I believe it was April, I actually had a recording that I sent to Project Veritas. They didn't air that one. There were so many recordings, but of my boss's boss suggesting this back in April, before anyone had lost their job. It wasn't even talk about it yet, but saying, if we talk about how you won't be able to go back to work if you don't get this, so Fox Corp was way ahead of the curve on like, yeah, let's get people fired. Wow. It was just really alarming. A straight propaganda meeting, nothing to do with what are the viewers' real concerns here. It was all, the shot is God, and we will create stories to coerce you. And that was just like the last straw. And I was like, get me out of here. Wow. I'm about informed consent, as long as you know what risks there are. Most people seem to be doing fine. That's wonderful. But to see the certain people whose lives have been ripped apart due to this, and they never had a warning. I covered a dad whose son died suddenly after the shot, and he never had a warning. The news was telling him it was safe and 100% effective. The shot was. And so after, he would watch NBC religiously, and they would tell him this. And so he sent his son off to get the shot, and the son dies suddenly of myocarditis. And it wasn't till a month later that there started to be warnings. Oh yeah, myocarditis is we're going to have to put an official warning label on that because it's happening a lot. But the dad just believed the news saying, oh yeah, it's foolproof, when the research was only beginning. And we as the media just need to be honest and say, look, the research is very, very new on this. Okay. Yeah. Way newer than all these other shots that you've ever taken. So if you want to venture into this, do it at your own risk. If we talked to our viewers that way and gave more transparency about this, and then they decided to get the shot and something bad happened, at least they knew everything they were getting into. But I'm seeing a lot of these viewers not even know what they're getting into because they're being deceived by the media. And that's what I have a problem with.
Last question. Do you think it's possible that there's some kind of push that's happening from politicians, obviously for certain things, and that if media doesn't cover that in favor of the politicians, that maybe the politicians would be less likely to accept interviews from certain stations? And do you think that there could be some kind of linkage there with, we got to get those views from those politicians?
To a certain extent, yeah. Relationships with politicians do sway our news organizations on how they cover stories. I know there was one question that one of the reporters wanted to ask the sheriff, who's a politician. Sheriffs are politicians, and about police use of force. And my boss stopped this guy in his tracks. I have that recording too. And she was like, well, we do not want to just blindside the sheriff with that question.
Whoa.
Okay, we have to keep our relationship with him. So we're going to prevent our viewers from knowing how he really feels about that, how he really reacts honestly when confronted with a spur of the moment question. We don't want our viewers to see that because we got to keep our relationship with the sheriff.
Wow. So that definitely happens where we're
Yeah.
not going to ask the hard questions. We're going to go for the softballs so we can get this person back for the views.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
We
This
need
has
to
been
keep our
absolutely
interviews with him. Yeah. We need to keep
it-
our interviews. We need to be able to interview him. We need to be able to schmooze him. So we're gonna keep it light with him this year.
Ay, 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 ay. Wow, that's intense. I think that's gonna be that's one to end it on. I want to, if you can, shout out again your Twitter, your Instagram, and your YouTube, and anything else that you want to say.
Yeah, my Instagram is at real.ivory. Real.ivory. Twitter is at ivoryhecker. And then my YouTube is youtube.com/ivoryhecker. And my website, uncensored.ivoryhecker.com. It's been so great to be on and chat with you. Actually, things came to mind that I've never talked about in other interviews, so that was good.
Yay! Awesome. Well, I've linked your channel in the description down below. For folks who are already watching, they might
Oh,
have to
awesome.
refresh to if they just want to click that link. But you could refresh, see it linked down below. Ivory, thank you so much. Stand by for one moment. I'm going to end the stream, and then we'll catch up for another second. Thank you everybody for watching. If you found this helpful, share it before it gets deleted, and subscribe to Ivory, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.
All right. See you later.